All right, welcome to the next video in our series of making a modern Sukajan jacket. In this video, we'll be sewing the sleeves onto the body, and what we'll end up with are essentially two complete shells that we will later combine together into one jacket. And when we do that, we'll be putting on the zipper and the ribbing around the collar and the waist and the cuffs and stuff. All right, so for starters, I'm going to do the white sleeves on the black body for starters, okay? All right, now I previously had these mocked up with the black sleeves, so I unclipped those, inverted them. We want to start with the front, and so the first thing is figure out which one goes where. And so, as we said before, the collar sort of goes up in the back, so this one goes with this left body, and this one goes with the right body. All right, let's start with the right body, and we'll take this over to the sewing machine. Okay, we're at the sewing machine with the right body and the right sleeve. We're going to be sewing these face to face, and we're going to go from the armpit up to the collar, so like this. So let's line up our shell, and remember we had left this a little bit short. We didn't go all the way in. That's so that we can get into this piece. And again, what I'm going to try to do to keep this even is we're going to clip one end and then clip the other, and then start working our way from the middle outward. Okay, so like this, these should line up. And these are on different curves, so it's going to be a little tricky. There's a notch in the middle where they should line up right here. So we're going to clip around that. And then let's start adding clips in here, like roughly every 2 inches. Okay, I've actually clipped these more like every 1 inch because of the difference in the curvature. I mean, the length is the same, but the difference in the curvature creates some unevenness, and we want to make sure that we are staying on track. So we're doing every 1 inch here. Now, similar to our other pattern pieces, these are going to be 5/8 seam allowance. All right, so 5/8 is going to be right here, just to the left of that 2. And we're going to want to make sure that this stays really flat, because again, these are in different curves, so there's some shaping going on here that we want to make sure that it's flat when we sew it. And again, I'm going to come in, to start with, I'm going to come in about 5/8 in, so we're not right at the edge. We'll do a back tack, and we'll just carefully go around this curve and make sure to keep both layers flat together. You may have to get your hands under here in order to do that. Okay, and we're going to stay on that 5/8 line. If you have to, you can lift and turn. All right, keep doing that, and I'll see you at the end. Okay, we're coming up to the end here. We're going to go all the way up, and we should be hitting right around where this stripe ends. That's our target. And back tack and cut. Okay. All right. Now let's unclip this, and we're going to do a top stitch. Okay, we took our clips off. We're going to do a top stitch, and following our philosophy that the batting is going to be slightly stiffer, when we do our top stitch, we're going to fold it over, keep the batting flat, which means that the top stitch is going to be on the white side here. And so we'll do the same thing where we line it up this seam just to the left of the foot, just on that edge of the foot, and we want to try and keep this flat. Again, it's going to be a little difficult because there's some shaping in here. Keep it as flat as possible, and I'm actually going to start just a little bit off. We don't want to be right on the seam. Back tack, and then lift the foot and rotate if you have to. And again, try to keep this as flat as possible as you come around. All right, like so. All right, and we're gonna have to be turning this quite a bit as we go. Okay, I'll see you when we get to the top of the collar. Okay, now we're coming up to the end, and we're going to do our back tack. Okay. Alright, so that's what that looks like. We'll end up cleaning up this curve a little bit before we put the collar on. Okay. So that's the right side. And basically do the same thing as this, but on the left side. Alright? And we'll see when we get both of those. Okay, now we have both our right and our left attached to the sleeve. The next thing we're going to do is attach the back, which means that we're going to be attaching the back to the sleeve, but with the front already attached. So it's the same process, except now we're doing it the back of the sleeve to the actual back of the shell, but with this part attached. Alright, so I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine and show you that. Okay, we're going to do the same thing, where we're going to do face to face, and the only complication is that we already have the front attached, but it's going to be the exact same process. So we line up the armpits here. Okay, we start clipping this. I want to clip at one end, then clip at the other end here, like so. And then there's a notch in the middle we want to line up. Okay, and then the same thing, roughly every 1 inch for this is what I would recommend. But start working your way from middle out until you get to about 1 clip every inch. All right, and I'll see you after we've done that. Okay, similar to the previous sew up of the sleeve, we've got our clips on here. We're going to do 5/8. This is the armpit, so we're going to come in. We're going to start in about 5/8 to give us some flexibility in how we handle this 4-point joining here. Alright, so right about there. You also want to make sure that this is completely flat. It's going to be a little difficult because of the shaping with these two different curves attached to each other. Okay, so back tack. And just take it slowly and make sure that you're flat, okay? And then you're going to want to turn every once in a while. Okay, let's continue to do that, and I'll meet you when you get to the end. Okay, we're getting to the end, and again, our target is going to be 5/8, which lines up with this thread right there. All right, and the back tack. Okay, let's remove these clips and then we'll do our top stitch. Okay, same philosophy here, that the batting being a little bit stiffer, we want that to stay flat, and so we're going to leave it under, and then we're going to be sewing on top of the white. Okay, so we're going to lift the foot to get this under here. This is starting to get a little bit thick, so you're going to have to be a little bit careful. And again, we're going to try to avoid this that 4-point joining for the time being, and we're going to come back to that. Plus, you're not going to be able to see the top stitch down there anyway. All right, so we're going to start right about there. Back tack, and then also again, make sure to keep this flat, and also make sure you keep the front well out of the sewing area. Okay, and then just continue slowly. You have to turn while keeping this flat. Okay. Sometimes it helps to pull on it a little bit and spread it simultaneously. Okay. All right. Yeah, pull and spread. Okay. All right, keep doing that till you get to the collar, and I'll see you there. Okay, we're near the end here, and same thing, we're going to go all the way up to the end. This will be in the seam allowance, but we're still going to keep going all the way, and then back tack and cut. All right, so now we have our back and front attached to the left, and we're going to do the same thing again, but just do it on the right hand side. All right, and I'll see you when we're finished with that. Okay, at this point we should have our fronts are sewn to the sleeve. The back is sewn to both sleeves, but we haven't yet sewn the front to the back. We haven't done this. All right, before we do that, let's do the exact same steps, but let's do that for the reverse side. So we're going to sew these sleeves, the black sleeves, to the white bodies. All right, so do exactly the same thing we did with this one, but for the reverse shell. The only caveat here is that when we get to our top stitch, we want to follow the same philosophy, that the top stitch should be that the batting side should be flat, and the top stitch should go on the side that's opposite that. So in this case, same as the stripe, the top stitch on this case is going to be on the back, whereas on this one, this top stitch was on the sleeve. All right, that's the only difference. Otherwise, it's going to be exactly the same. Okay, as I just mentioned, I've got the body to the sleeve. The cover stitch is going to be on the body side this time, because based on our philosophy that we want this part to be flat so it doesn't create excess thickness, because it's kind of stiff. We're going to do our top stitch on this side. So basically every other construction step is the same as we previously did, except now we're going to do top stitch on this side. Okay, so same as before, we're going to start a little bit in from this, from where the armpit is, where this 4-point joining happens. So that gives us more flexibility to do something here. So we're going to start the top stitch probably about 1 inch in. You shouldn't be able to see that. And same thing, we just sort of keep it, pull on it a little bit, keep some tension, keep it flat and smooth. All right, I'm just going to do this all the way till we get to the collar. Okay, now we're nearing the end of this up by the collar. We'll do our back tack. All right, we'll clean up this curve before we do the collar. All right, so that's what that's going to look like for this side of the shell. Do the same thing with all 4 pieces, and then we'll meet you back and we'll talk about joining the sides from the front to the back. All right, we'll see you on that side. Okay, so we finished the second shell. We have the sleeve attached to both sleeves attached to the back and sleeves attached to the front. The next step, as I may have mentioned, is that we need to sew the fronts to the back. Now, the caveat here is that these two shells need to be attached to each other, and when we sew them to each other, they're sewn in back to back, or sorry, face to face. And once it's sewn up face to face, we need to be able to invert it, which means we need to leave an opening somewhere in one of the shells to allow that inversion to happen. Okay, so we only need that hole to be in one of the shells, and I like to do it in this area between the armpit and the waist, because it's not very visible. And since we only have to do it on one shell, we have to make a choice. Are we going to do it on this shell or this shell? I'm inclined to do it on this shell because it would be easier, less obvious to have an external stitch right here, as opposed to this, where we actually may want to seal it up and maybe even do a top stitch on this. We obviously can't do a top stitch on top of something that's sewn from the top. So anyway, all that to say is we're gonna sew these up first, and then when we get to this one, we'll show you how to leave an opening. All right, so we're at the sewing machine. We want to sew the front to the back, and this is going to be face to face, so it might be helpful to invert your shell to start with. And then we want to clip this face to face, and we can use notches that are here. So there's a notch in the middle. Let's see, we got that, yeah, so right there. I usually clip on either side of the notch, and then we want to get a clip at the end, both ends. It may not line up perfectly at the waist, but that's where we want to make any corrections later. So if this doesn't line up at the waist, that's fine. All right, now clip this. Maybe add two or three more clips in here. Okay, one thing we talked about earlier when we were sewing the sleeves on is that we were backing off from this final seam. We're backing off a little bit. Now is where we're going to close this up completely. And so we're going to basically, when we sew this, we're going to come straight through from this back all the way up and across into this sleeve, and so that should close off this 4-point connection completely right there. Okay, I'm going to start from the waist side so that we're on the batting to start with. And again, it's 5/8 seam allowance, back tack. And then this is pretty straight, so we just keep going until we get to the armpit, okay? And I'll see you there. Okay, we're at the end here, and I'm gonna come all the way off the edge and onto the sleeve. And then we'll go off the sleeve, and then we'll do our back tack. Now that should have this 4-point connection completely closed off now. Okay, this next step is optional. I'm going to do a top stitch on this, but in this case I'm actually folding the batting side, because since they both have batting on, I'm folding them flat. And so this top stitch isn't going to actually add any strength, but it will keep it flatter. And then the hope would be that it's going to be less bulky when you have the two together. So same process, you just keep this seam line on the left side of that foot, back tack, And then the key is you're going to have to be really careful because you need this to stay flat. You don't want it to fold over as you're sewing it, okay? Again, this is just optional. Same process, but in this case we're actually folding the batting side flat on both sides. All right. Again, this is optional, but if you decide to do this, my preference is to come from the waist in, which means when you do this opposite side, you're going to be putting the seam on the right hand side of this foot, but doing the same process just from the other side. Okay, I just find that it makes it a little bit easier because we have less material up in this area. Okay, all right, I'm going to finish this up. Okay, this is what it looks like when it's done, and you can see that it sits a lot flatter than when the seams are straight. So anyway, again, optional, and you can only really do this on one shell because the other shell is going to need a hole here to allow you to invert. All right, moving on. Okay, go to the other side, do the exact same thing, but now it looks like we're on the right side. Exact same thing, get this finished up, and then we'll move on to the second shell, which is going to be slightly different. Okay, so this shell is completely buttoned up. We've got everything sewn together, fronts and backs. Now we're going to move on to this shell, and again, when we do this, we're going to leave one of these sides open, but we still need to sew it at the top and the bottom, and then leave like maybe a 6 to 8 inch opening. All right, so we're going to do that now. Okay, so we're going to sew this, but again, if we need it face to face, so you're going to want this inverted. Probably should have done that first. All right, so we're inverted, and we're going to pin it the same way that we did the other one. We're still going to pin it across the whole thing, but we're not going to sew it up. All right, so start in the middle, work your way up, and then when you get that done, we'll come back. One difference here on this shell, remember when we pinned it up, when we folded it, we had this side had the batting on it, and we were sewing up and over and across to this. With this one, the batting is here, so we're actually folding this seam down. And when we do this end, we're going to start off this and then work our way down that way. So when you clip this, make sure you clip it so the seam allowance is facing down this way. Okay, so the batting stays straight. All right, that's one extra tip there. Okay, we've got the front and back pinned together. Now again, for this one, we're going to start in the sleeve, in the seam allowance of the sleeve here, and we're going to come across. Now remember, we're going to want to leave like 6 to 8 inches open, which means we're only going to be coming down like 1 to 2 inches from here. Okay, so we're going to line this up at our 5/8 seam allowance. We're going to start on this side, the batting side. Okay, so this will actually close up that armpit area. Back tack, and then we'll come in. I'm going to give myself extra room, so I'm only going to come in like about 1.5 inches or so, and then back tack, and then cut. All right. So that is the top part. Now we're going to do the same, but coming from the bottom. Okay, now we're coming from the waist up, and again, we only want to come in 1 to 2 inches from here. That's about 1.5 inches. And cut. All right. So that gives us like 6 to 8 inch opening here. All right. Now, do the same, or you can do the same on the other side to give yourself more options. or you could just go straight across. Okay, it's going to be up to you. Technically, you only need one of these openings to be able to invert. Okay. When I do mine, I think I'm just going to go straight across, but that only leaves me one opening. All right. All right. So finish that up, and then we'll see you on the other side. Okay. So we just finished this one up. Let's invert it. Okay. Now you can see that this side has a gap here. All right. That's going to allow us to invert this once we come do our shells face to face. We invert it, and we invert it by pulling it out through this hole here. This is about 7 inches, so that's probably like, it's gonna be tight, but you should be able to do that. This other side, I went ahead and I just completely closed that. All right, the next step is to combine the two shells together, and we're gonna do that starting with the zipper. Okay, so that's the end for this video. Stay tuned for the next one, and thank you for watching.